Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. This is This Week in Jihad, where every single week we think that we're not going to be back the next week because we think that the jihad will suddenly stop because Islam is so relentlessly peaceful. But every week, jihadis throw a cup of cold water right in our faces. It's a sad life. Sad life. Anyway, David Wood
It's
with
a
me
terrible
now.
change, David. Really, every week I think this is going to be it. We're going to take the week off. Or we actually could come and say jihad is over.
Yeah.
And now there's nothing else that needs to be said and done. We can just relax and watch some old Mary Tyler Moore Show reruns, and everything's going to be great.
Yeah, it's like, it reminds me like every time a mob, beats someone to death in Pakistan for supposedly, insulting the Quran or insulting Muhammad. And then it says, and they arrested those people and the government's going to crack down. And I think, well, they got all the culprits. They got them all. So now it's over. And then it happens again. And I'm like, I'm so confused right now. These jihadis are confusing me.
It's a very confusing religion. Everybody knows, every non-Muslim politician in the West knows for sure that Islam is a religion of peace and tolerance. And yet, so many Muslim clerics who've dedicated their lives to trying to understand this religion and perfectly and communicate it properly don't seem to grasp that. They really should just sit down with Hillary Clinton or John Kerry or Pope Francis and get the true Islam.
Yeah, and it is weird how every politician, every journalist, every educator, every entertainer in the West is an expert on Islam and is thoroughly qualified to explain when something has absolutely nothing to do with Islam, namely, terrorism. They all know it. They know it inside and out. And so it's an interesting religion where the people who know the least about it are the most qualified to explain to everyone else what it teaches.
And the people who know the most about it, like al-Baghdadi, the caliph of the Islamic State, who had a doctorate in Islamic studies, although I hasten to note that a Muslim professor recently remonstrated with me for passing on those reports that al-Baghdadi had a PhD in Islamic studies and assured me that he only had a PhD in Quran recitation. And of course, we all know that you can recite the Quran without having the slightest idea what it means and what it's all about. But in all seriousness, al-Baghdadi, many others have had degrees in various forms, various aspects of Islamic studies, and yet we're supposed to believe they don't know anything about the religion whatsoever.
And we're supposed to believe that Muhammad and his companions knew absolutely nothing about Islam, because when we quote Muhammad saying, "I've been commanded to fight people until they say there's no God but Allah and I am his messenger," we think that Muhammad knows what he's talking about. And we think that Allah knows what he's talking about when he commands, fight those who do not believe in Allah. We think they know what they're talking about, not realizing that it's Western journalists and politicians who know better about Islam and what Islam truly is than Allah and Muhammad and the companions of Muhammad. So,
of course.
Yep.
Goes without saying, David.
Yep.
So shall we go to the news for this week?
Yes. One quick comment here. Ashton Sharad says, "Hello, David. I want to say I'm a fan of both of you." That's wise. "I want to ask a question so I can share the gospel with my Muslim friends. What do? I don't want them to go to hell." So you want to share the gospel with your Muslim friends. I have a video titled something like "How to Share Unpleasant Facts with Pleasant Muslims." Check that out, and that would be a good start. So check out my video on that, and I'll give you basically my approach when I'm talking to someone. If I'm talking to someone one-on-one, it's not someone who's being aggressive, not being mean, not being hostile. So anyway, the point is, just because you see me on YouTube and I'm blasting away at Muhammad or something, don't think that that's how I am in every situation. So if you're talking about a Muslim friend and you really want to have some good discussions with your Muslim friend, I got some pointers for how to go about that. All right, now, this is, if you want to say that we're going to go into this week in jihad, Robert, I'm guessing this show is pretty much over because I can't imagine you would have anything from the religion of peace.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have about 25 tabs open. I'm not sure we'll be able to get to everything.
Oh, my goodness.
But it's been a very busy week, as it always is in jihad. And this ranges from jihad massacres in several countries to fake hate crimes to Islamophobia, conspiracy mongering, and Islamic anti-Semitism, and also to actual Islamophobia in a couple of places in Europe, where 2 teachers were fired this week for Islamophobia. Mm-hmm. And well, it's interesting to note
good riddance to them.
Yes, of course. The denizens of the guardians, I should say, of multiculturalism, peace, and tolerance would say that these people were bigoted, racist, hate mongers, and they got everything they deserved. But it's noteworthy that probably the very same people who were cheering the firing of these 2 teachers, one in France and one in Switzerland, would be hailing the same teachers as heroes if they had been equally critical of Christianity. Mm-hmm. It's not really that they believe in not insulting or criticizing someone else's religion. It's that they especially don't like criticism of Islam in particular, which for some reason has become, well, actually for some very good reasons and important reasons, that has become the secular left's favorite religion. And I think they both share a bent toward authoritarianism, a distaste for freedom of expression and so on, and that leads to their kinship. But in any case, there's no doubt, when you look at some of the famous atheists in the world, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and so on, when they criticize Christianity, they're heroes. But when any of them have ventured into criticizing Islam, it suddenly becomes quite a different story, as you well know.
Yeah, it is interesting because, on social media included, you can blast away at Christianity all you want. You're safe. You can blast away at atheism all you want. You're totally safe. As soon as you start saying, I have a problem with Muhammad saying that you can beat your wives into submission, or that you could take women as sex captives, or that, Islam has to violently subjugate the rest of the world, or that apostates have to be killed. And you say, hey, I have a problem with apostates being killed. Suddenly, by objecting to that command of Muhammad, you're a racist and a bigot and a hate monger, and you're the one who has to be silenced. And it's just so interesting that these, Western journalists don't want anyone to object to killing apostates. I mean, keep in mind, this is a problem. People keep dying over these commands. And a lot of people in Muslim countries aren't free to stand against those commands that are getting them killed. That means if there's any criticism, if anyone's going to criticize these teachings, it kind of has to come from outside, from people like us. But as soon as we do it, we're confronted with an impenetrable wall of politicians and journalists and educators and entertainers all saying, no, you can't say that. You can't. And so what they really mean is no one in the entire world is allowed to speak against this. If you speak against it in a Muslim country, you'll be killed. You'll be beaten to death or beheaded or something. And if you speak against it in a Western society where you'd think, of all places, people would want you to speak about this, you have to be shut down, you have to be silenced, you have to be fired, you have to be all kinds of things. And really, really weird situation. All right, well, what do we have as far as what do we have this week in jihad? Where do you want to start?
Shall we go to Zahra Balloo?
Oh, you want to say? I got a video clip of her. Yeah. Why don't you break down the situation? Now, her comments were from a few weeks ago, but the story right now is that she's taking a sabbatical or something because of the blowback.
She's under Zionist attack, as she herself puts it, and so she's taking a break. It's a public relations disaster for the Council on American Islamic Relations. She's the head of their San Francisco chapter. She's very vocal, highly anti-American, supportive of jihadis, and she's been doing this for years. So she made more or less a routine speech for her, as you noted a few weeks ago, at the American Muslims for Palestine, which is a Hamas-linked group in the United States that was having its conference, and she said that there's this terrible Zionist effort to foster Islamophobia and to make people hate Islam and Muslims to further their nefarious Zionist aims. She went into a lot of detail about this, that she said that, for example, that the Zionists hate CAIR and the American Muslims for Palestine because they're in favor of Black Lives Matter and so on, and not just the Palestinian cause. She was very much playing, in other words, to the leftist Islamic alliance. But in any case, now this has blown up for CAIR because it's a kind of open anti-Semitism in her conspiracy mongering about Zionists working to foster Islamophobia. She's suddenly exposed the deeply anti-Semitic assumptions that all too many Muslims in the United States and around the world have, because they're embedded within the Quran, which calls the Jews the worst enemies of the Muslims in chapter 5, verse 82, so many other deeply anti-Semitic passages. And so to try to take the heat off, I believe, she's taking a sabbatical for a while till this dies down, and everything will go on as before pretty soon. But for the moment, they don't want all this pretty much open anti-Semitism out there.
Now, Robert, no offense, but I can't believe anything you're saying right now, and so I'm just going to play some of what Zahra Balloo said, so everyone can see that you're totally exaggerating and making stuff up about her. That everything she said was inclusive of everyone, completely tolerant, no problems whatsoever. So let's go ahead and watch a couple clips. This is about 2 minutes of clips from Zahra Balloo to completely refute and destroy what Robert just said. Here we go.
I want to underscore first and foremost that as Muslims, Islamophobia is not something we've been dealing with for 10 years or 20 years. It's something that we've been dealing with for hundreds of years. From the moment that our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, introduced his message to his community, people opposed him. People opposed him. People were violent against him. They dehumanized him. They boycotted him. And the Muslims were unsafe. But over and over again, they turned to their faith and they emerged victorious. So these conversations are heavy, but they are not unprecedented. It can feel difficult at times, but we have a history of winning. We don't have a history of being richer or more powerful necessarily. We have a history of winning because we have Allah on our side. I want to underscore what Brother Atta said, which was that this, at the root of this, is a dehumanization of our communities. Muslims are not good enough. Arabs are not good enough. Palestinians don't believe in peace. They teach their children violence. If they would just stop fighting, then everything would be okay. We know that that's not true. We know that it's a talking point, that they dehumanize us to advance their agenda, that Islamophobia is a well-funded conspiracy, a well-funded project, a well-funded...
Did you catch that?
Oh, yeah.
She said, she caught herself. Islamophobia is a well-funded conspiracy, project.
She knows what words to use and what words not to, of course, but she might as well have been wearing a tinfoil hijab. Really, the whole thing is absolutely paranoid.
Oh, yeah. We're not done. But go ahead and finish what you're saying. Okay.
Project to marginalize us, to imprison us, to deport us, to silence us. And they do it because they're afraid of what we will do. They're afraid of our message. They're afraid of our advocacy. They know that Muslims fight for Black Lives Matter. They know that Muslims fight for police accountability. They know that Muslims fight against homelessness and poverty. They know that Muslims care for the environment. And most importantly, they know what my parents taught us. that Muslims fight for Palestine, that Muslims will fight for a free Palestine, and so they must come after us. The organizations that promote Zionist agendas, materials, marketing, and legislation are the same ones that want to ban Muslims, are the same ones that want to pass anti-Sharia legislation. The police officers in the United States who kill unarmed black men, women, and children are trained by the Israeli military. The technology that is used at the US-Mexico border is the same technology used at the apartheid wall.
Robert, did you catch that? The Israeli military is training U.S. police officers to kill black people. And this is all part of the conspiracy. I mean, project.
Yes.
The project.
This relentless demonization of Israel in this this fake idea that the Israelis are teaching American police to be brutal. It's false on so many levels, but it's rooted in the Islamic anti-Semitism that we were touching on before. Zahra Billoo sees the Israelis as the fountain of all evil because this is what the Quran tells her. And she's getting a little bit too open about it in this for the politically correct environment in which CAIR operates.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, you know, there was a Hamas strike against Israel and Israel fired a missile back and a bunch of innocent people died. And hey, you know, I condemn Israel for this. They should have been more careful. That's one thing. But then you have the insane stuff, right? You have the completely just where in the name of common sense are you getting this from? You sound insane. And we see this all the time, like the Jews are training animals to bring this in, and they're putting what were they?
I have lots of animal stories over the years, not this week, but lots of animal stories at Jihad Watch over the years. In the Egyptian press, the Iranian press, various others, they've caught pigeons, they've caught seals. They're all trained by the Zionists to carry out various nefarious operations.
They're being trained like Western police officers.
Yeah,
Western police officers are being trained to go around killing black people, according to the Council on American Islamic Relations. And then so the point is, you can criticize the U.S. government, the Israeli government, any European government, and say, here's something they did and I disagree with it and here's why. But then you have like the insane things, like I don't remember exactly, but wasn't Israel supposedly putting chemicals in their drinks to make women more sexually aroused to get them to be unfaithful to their husbands and so on? And I've just seen all kinds of amazing stuff like that. But then she also said, why do they hate us? Why do they attack us? Because they know that we stand up for the homeless and we fight for those in poverty and we protect the environment. Now, Robert, you've been doing this a long, long time, and you know other people who have been exposing jihad over the years. Let me just ask, and I want an honest answer. Is your main problem with Islam A, that it fights poverty and stands up for the environment, or B, the terrorism, the relentless terrorism that's been going on for 14 centuries? Which one of those is a bigger issue? Be honest, don't lie.
I have to go with B.
Oh, okay.
I'm afraid that I've never heard anybody in well over 20 years saying, I really dislike Islam because it encourages people to care for the homeless and the environment. Never once have I heard anyone say that. And, Zahra Billoo, of course, is ignoring the elephant in the room. If there weren't jihad terrorist acts, if there weren't jihad terror plots, then nobody would have any problem with Islam. There are all kinds of people of all kinds of religions in the United States and around the world. And nobody's interested in shutting down any of these religions or any of the people who hold to these religions. It's only because they are relentlessly attacking the rest of the world that anybody gets upset. And that the fact that they are attacking the rest of the world because of these violent, aggressive imperatives within the Quran and the example of Muhammad. And so, of course, she knows this. She has to know this. She's not an idiot.
Yeah.
And she's very much trying to set up a smokescreen so that the naive, the easily led, the brainwashed by Pope Francis will not realize that this is the case.
And I mean, just think about that, because you have people who are pandering to their audience, right? And so, I mean, think she's sitting there in front of a Muslim audience, and the reason they hate us is because we fight poverty, we help the homeless, we stand up for the environment. That's why they have to come again. I mean, that's so insane. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, so I mean, I can imagine being at a Christian conference. And I'm just thinking, if some Christian speaker stood up there and he said, you know what? There are lots of atheists nowadays who complain about Christianity. And I was like, yeah, that is true. Huh? He goes, I'm going to tell you why that is. It's because Christians have homeless shelters. And I'd be like, what? That's not what, I mean, yeah, they complain about Christianity. That's not it. That's not the reason. That's ridiculous, right? It is a ridiculous thing to say. And yet that's what passes for an awesome presentation well,
it's noteworthy that she's taking a sabbatical, because it shows that the awesome presentation didn't go over very well with a lot of people that were allied with CAIR, and a lot of the leftist Jewish groups that have been fighting so-called Islamophobia. Even the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, was upset with her about this because she's blaming everything on the Zionists, when ordinarily they would have been completely in her camp. And so it'll be interesting to see how long she's gone, if she comes back.
Oh, she'll be back. She'll be back. That's not enough. That's not enough to get rid of you from CAIR. Oh, I'll just add one last thing, and then we can jump on to another topic. Just last week, we were talking about Ilhan Omar's Islamophobia bill. And one of the criticisms that was raised by a congressman who opposed the bill was, what's she doing? She's allied with CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and there are all kinds of problems that you could point to with the Council on American Islamic Relations. And he was blasted for bringing that up. Like, how dare you say anything critical of CAIR? And yet here we are just a week later. And really, with me, Robert, it's the hypocrisy, right? I mean,
sure.
On the one hand, you had...
That's why she took the sabbatical now.
Yeah.
Because CAIR is thinking, well, we can't make Ilhan Omar look bad by having Zahra Balloo out there with her tinfoil hijab on.
And it's the entire time she's complaining about people dehumanizing Muslims. Guys, what I do, I'm not doing it to dehumanize Muslims. I'm doing it to help Muslims. It's your religion that is dehumanizing people. I'm against that because it dehumanizes people, even you, right? I'm here to...
Dave, I couldn't agree more, but it's a very important point to note that this dehumanizing language, that's a prelude to shutting us down.
Yeah.
I think I told you before that the Global Internet Forum on Counterterrorism has classified me as a violent extremist. This is the counterterror arm of Microsoft, YouTube, Twitter, etc. And they, when my lawyer wrote to them, they wrote back and said, but he's always dehumanizing Muslims by reporting on the crimes of jihadis.
Yeah.
And so this dehumanizing business is really, what it amounts to is dehumanizing. The definition of it is criticizing somebody we don't want criticized. But it means that we're ticketed for being silenced.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by the hypocrisy. Because if you look at what she's doing, the entire time she's speaking, she's dehumanizing the groups that she's opposing. They're all conspiring to go around and go on killing sprees and murder everyone, and they're training people to go out and kill black people, and it's just because we want to feed the homeless, and they don't want us to feed the homeless because they hate the homeless so much. It's like she's demonizing and dehumanizing the people she disagrees with in every possible way, making them sound like the most evil people imaginable by all kinds of false accusations. Her religion does the same thing. Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures, according to Surah 98, verse 6 of the Quran. We're the worst of that's dehumanizing. That's actual dehumanization, right? We're lower than pigs. We're lower than cattle. That's what Jews and Christians who reject Islam are. So the religion dehumanizes us, their speakers dehumanize us, and their complaint against us is we're dehumanizing them for saying, hey, don't believe when the Quran says fight those who do not believe in Allah. Don't believe that. It's not a true revelation. Don't believe that guy when he says that to you. And you're dehumanizing us by saying not to slaughter people in the name of Allah. You're dehumanizing us by saying that you're not the worst of creatures. This is some amazing stuff. All right, what else?
It is.
What else we got?
It's absurd. But in any case, we can go now to Fairfax, Virginia, Fairfax High School, where a sophomore. And because she is a minor, I guess it's best that I not mention her name, but her name was all over the papers when she accused two students at Fairfax High School of ripping off her hijab in the midst of an Islamophobic attack against her.
I got what we can call her, Hijabi Smollett.
That's good. That's good, because that's exactly what she is. As it turned out, the Fairfax police investigated the incident, and they found no evidence of a hate crime. And they even issued a statement saying that she admitted that this whole thing was not actually the way that she had originally told the media, that there were no Islamophobic statements made, that it all just turned out to be a fight between two students, and she was involved. And apparently she was trying to cover up for her role in the fight by claiming that it was a gratuitous Islamophobic hate attack. But it's just indicative of how much our society is avid to find this kind of thing because of this caricature of these redneck Islamophobic racist louts roaming the streets, brutalizing innocent Muslims. And these things become huge media events and are broadcast everywhere. And then more often than not, they turn out to be fake. And it's really because, hate crime nowadays, victimhood is high status thing. If you're a victim, you get all sorts of perks and all sorts of special consideration. And hate crimes are the currency of victimhood. So she was just trying to get rich. And once again, as is so often the case, it didn't work out.
And I mean, I'm sure that the media by now, after so many of these fake hate crimes, has learned its lesson. And when they heard that this hate crime, this heinous hate crime had occurred, that they said, you know what, before we talk about this, we need to investigate. I'm sure that's what happened. Right?
Not a chance.
I remember one of these. You may remember this because it wasn't too far from us, but there's an amusement park in New York. This was several years ago, and there was a bunch of Muslims went to the park and so on, and they told a Muslim girl in a hijab that she can't wear her hijab on the roller coaster because you can't have things on your head because it can possibly get caught on something and that would choke the life out of you and you'd die. So you can't be going around this roller coaster where something hanging off your head, it gets loosened up, it wraps around something, and so they just have a rule against headgear. And then so there was this massive outcry. Everyone's racist, everyone's Islamophobic because people don't want the Muslim girl to get her head torn off on a roller coaster. But I just read, I think it was just several months ago, that same girl, if I recall correctly, I believe that same girl was later killed in an honor killing. She was killed by her family over something else. And
I didn't hear that.
It's just amazing that the big threat to this girl is people are telling her, hey, don't wear headgear on a piece of equipment like this, and then she actually ends up getting killed. Yeah, I might have to. I didn't do a video on that. I might have to look that up.
I have a very similar incident. This is from about 4 years ago, there was a very similar story as the one in Fairfax High School. There was a girl said she was on the New York subway and she had her hijab ripped off and the whole subway car was crowded, she said, and nobody came to help. Everybody was watching as these two terrible right-wing Trump supporters tore her hijab off and abused her, and everybody sat there and watched. And I thought, this is 2017. Nobody took a video? Come on. That was one thing. But ultimately, it all came out that she had made it all up. She had been out with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend was not Muslim. Her father did not approve of her dating a non-Muslim. So she made up this story to explain why she was out and out late. Okay. The worst part of this, though, David, is that right after all this happened, and she was charged with making a hoax police complaint, she appeared in court, and her father was with her, and her head was shaved.
I remember that.
Now, the head shaving was done by her father to humiliate her because she had disobeyed him. And that was an indication that she was in imminent danger, possibly of being honor killed herself, but clearly in a very abusive situation. And yet nobody picked up on it because that's not the narrative that the establishment media wants. They only want stories that give the impression that Muslims are the victims of widespread discrimination and harassment in the United States, which is not the case.
And so in that case, it wasn't, hey, I want a media frenzy or something like that, or I want to put out a book on how I'm a victim of a hate crime and I want to get CNN involved. It's just, I don't want my dad to find out that I was hanging out with someone, and because my dad might kill me over this. And so she
stepped into the media firestorm probably without realizing.
Yeah, and gosh, that's a situation where you got to say, okay, I mean, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. You're trying to avoid getting killed by your dad, and so you come up with this story. Just, gosh, needed a better story, I guess.
Well, the problem is that when you make a complaint like that, they're avid to investigate because this is the kind of crime that everybody wants to see nowadays to validate their assumptions about American society. And so she had to know that when it was investigated, it wasn't going to hold up. Yeah. Probably didn't realize that because when you're 18, you don't always think things through.
And if you're told all your life, well, everyone's in on this and this big conspiracy of all these people in positions of power who are conspiring to target the Muslim community, you might think, well, they're gonna gloss over this, and my dad won't be too upset if he thinks I'm just a victim of a hate crime, and so might think she'd get away with it, and not realizing, wait a minute, actually, the vast overwhelming majority of people in the United States don't want hate crimes against you, even if you're Muslim. And if they think there's been a hate crime against you, they're going to investigate to get to the bottom of it, to arrest people who committed this heinous act against you. Problem is, over and over again, they just keep turning out to not be true.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I can't remember the last anti-Muslim hate crime that actually was true. I've got a whole category of hate crimes at Jihad Watch, and again and again and again, they turn out to be hoaxes. It's a shame, but I understand why they do it, because this is what gets you status nowadays. This is what is currency in our society. And you get protected victimhood status. You reinforce the idea that Muslims are victims in the United States, so they need special consideration. They need less attention paid to Sharia, less attention paid to jihad. There's no downside.
And just to be clear, in case those who've been conditioned for decades by groups like CAIR to think that people want hate crimes against Muslims. Robert, you've been railing against jihad for a long time. Are you in favor of people walking up to Muslim girls and tearing off their hijabs and things like that? Or would you condemn that sort of thing?
David, I am not in favor of that kind of thing, and I condemn it unequivocally. The idea that criticizing jihad violence and Sharia oppression of women means that you want anybody to be brutalized is kind of absurd. The whole reason for opposing jihad violence and Sharia oppression is because you don't want people to be brutalized. And so there's absolutely no justification for that kind of behavior. And anybody who claims that I or anybody in this field is in favor of such a thing is not telling the truth.
Yeah. So, guys, I don't know how we can make this any clearer. One of the main reasons we have problems and objections to Islam. There are all kinds of reasons, but the oppression of non-Muslims, the oppression of women, the oppression of even the non-dominant Islamic sect, the violence against them, basically people doing things that they have no right to do to other people. That's the problem. Well, guess what? We're not in favor of doing that to Muslims either. Did you catch what Robert said? That would defeat everything we're saying. If people said, "Hey, we want a society where Muslims are second-class citizens and people can walk around and abuse them," like the reverse in Pakistan, where you have Muslims and they can go around abusing Christians and Hindus and so on. We want a society like that in reverse. No one wants. We don't want that. And yet, if you ask groups like CAIR and so on, if you ask Zahra Balloo, what do we want? That's what we want. She even said they want to arrest us, they want to deport us, they want to do all of these things. Yeah. All right. Well, we've only we've burned through a good chunk of our time. Let's go into a more rapid fire mode with any of the remaining stories you got. I'll try to keep my comments.
I got so many remaining.
I'll try to keep my comments to a minimum, although I will not be able to keep that promise.
Okay, no problem. There's an awful lot this week. Unfortunately, I think that it would let up in the run-up to Christmas, but that's not the case. We have out of Nigeria, Islamic State, West Africa province, on Sunday, December 19th, murdered 12 Christians in an attack in Borno State. These people were on their way out of church after attending worship services. 12 Christians killed in a jihad massacre in Nigeria.
One quick thing, Robert. I couldn't resist. I visit multiple news sites every single day. I didn't see that on them. I can only assume that you're making that up. That's one. But two, hypothetically, if something did happen like that and it was reversed, I remember when there was an attack on a mosque in New Zealand. I remember it was international news for months. It was international news for months. And yet, if it were to happen to a church, we don't hear about it. That's
right. This story, the source for this story is a site that tracks Christian persecution, Morning Star News. And they have sources on the ground in Nigeria. So I have no reason to doubt the report. Unfortunately, it's altogether too much like many, many other reports. This happens on virtually a daily basis in Nigeria, as is also shown by, this is a story out of the Nigerian publication Independent, not to be confused with the Independent in the UK. And the Nigerian Independent noted on December 19th also, excuse me, that the death toll had reached 38 in another jihad massacre in Kaduna State. The other one was in Borno State. And in Kaduna, the Muslims swooped in, killed people in several villages, set fire to vehicles and farm produce and houses. This all is in the service, of course, of trying to clear the non-Muslims out of the area so that the Muslims can take hold of it. What we call the Islamic world was Islamized in much the same way many centuries ago, outside the historical memory of most of us, which is a shame because the same thing is happening now.
Well, I'm struggling to believe anything you're saying right now because it flies in the face of everything I hear from Western news organizations.
Who we know are trustworthy.
Absolutely.
Another story out of Nigeria is little bit different. There is a bill that was introduced there by a senator, Abiodun Olujimi, and she has introduced a bill calling for the equality of rights for women. And Muslim senators are opposing it. on the grounds that it is anti-Islamic.
Wait. Can you repeat all of that real quick? So
Sure.
she proposed what?
A bill calling for prohibiting discrimination against women, providing for the equality of rights of women.
Mm-hmm.
And the Muslims in the Senate say no, they're not going to support this because it is un-Islamic. It contravenes Islam. Abu Bakr Yusuf, representing the Taraba Central Senatorial District in Nigeria, he said this equality infringes on the Quran. I will not support the passage of the bill until the word equality is removed. When you bring equality into it, it infringes on the Quran.
Well, gosh, I'm still
He
confused.
said it.
Where's
He
he?
obviously has not learned the true peaceful teachings of Islam
Did-
that Joe Biden could tell him if he remembered them. But unfortunately, the imams in Nigeria seem to be teaching some Islamophobic perversion of Islam.
They must be getting all their information about Islam from your website, because where else could they be getting it? I mean, there's no other place they could be getting their view of Islam other
Yes.
than your website.
That's it, man. Okay, let's see what else we got here. We have, also another story out of Nigeria, and this is about Muhammad Mubarak Bala, who is a Muslim who left Islam, was a Muslim. He is the president of the Humanist Association of Nigeria, and he has been in prison for some time for blasphemy. And he was forced, he recently disclosed, he was forced to pray as a Muslim while in prison, even though he is very publicly not a Muslim. As a matter of fact, he's in prison for not being a Muslim. His posts were not actually blasphemous or inflammatory in any way. They were just critical of Islam. So his case is kind of a microcosm of what we're looking at happening in the West if hate speech laws and other forms of law, other laws that would criminalize criticism of Islam are brought in, and people would say, "Oh, that could never happen." Actually, it's well on the way to happening.
Wow, interesting stuff. Now, Robert, I'm on your website right now.
Okay.
What is this about Putin saying that 32 terrorist attacks were foiled just in
That's
2021? That's just this
32.
year, 32 terrorist attacks?
Yep. So that's what 2.5 every month, and that's in all over Russia. But almost certainly we're talking about jihad terrorism in the first place. He did not specify, but that's really the only terrorism that Russia has to deal with. The Chechens, the Dagestanis, the Muslims in the Caucasus that's been a hotbed of jihad activity for years. The Tsarnaev brothers, who carried out the Boston Marathon attack, are from that area, and so it's very clearly still a jihadi hotspot, obviously.
And that makes me think that Russia's kind of on the ball with these terrorist attacks. If they're stopping all these terrorist attacks, and then we don't hear about a lot of terrorist attacks, it's kind of like the U.S. I mean, I think of the government as idiotic and incompetent when it comes to jihad, and yet I remember in New York, because I lived in the Bronx, I counted like 12 foiled terrorist attacks in a row. There were like 12 in a row that they stopped before they actually happened. I'm thinking, I think that, the counterterrorism people are actually more on the ball than a bunch of the idiot spokesmen for our government.
They have to be quiet about it and send the idiot spokesman out to say the politically correct things. But clearly they've been more attuned to it than perhaps they've let on. Related to this is a story out of France, and that is that a mosque that was found to be preaching hatred, violence, and jihad has been closed for 6 months.
That's kind of racist.
That's what the Muslim leaders in France are saying. But I just thought 6 months? Come on, you think they're going to open up in 6 months and they're going to be preaching love and peace and brotherhood? This is just incredibly naive.
It's like getting banned for a week on YouTube and like, you were criticizing jihad and the killing of apostates, but we're giving you a 1 week timeout, and you're going to come back and not be opposed to those things anymore. Oh, what? Your mosque is preaching, you're calling for the violent subjugation of the entire world and killing apostates and all these things. We're going to shut you down for 6 months. Like, you're not going to, you can't meet anyway. And we know your hearts will melt during that time, and you'll learn your lesson, and you'll come back. You'll come back way more peaceful.
Just imagine how embarrassed the French authorities will be when they find out that hatred, violence, and jihad is standard Quranic teaching, and it's not just this one mosque; it's all over the place. But clearly, they don't have any idea of that, and it's just incredible to me how irresponsible these public officials are in dealing with large and growing Muslim communities all over Europe, and they're pretending that they're dealing with something that is other than what it is. And an example of what happens there, sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but I was just going to go to Sweden, where a Muslim migrant was recently arrested, and when he was arrested, he's caught on video screaming, "I am ISIS! I have been with ISIS! I will continue with ISIS!" Now, maybe he was just showboating, but there are guys who are with ISIS who are in Europe, who came in with the refugee streams.
Yeah, and notice, now they're returning. But before that, when ISIS said, "Hey, we're establishing the caliphate, and we're going to go around, we're going to kill all Shias or any Muslim from any deviant sect. We're going to kill them. We're going to subjugate the Christians. We're going to make them pay jizya. Women we capture, they're gonna become our sex slaves." And people started pouring out of the mosques in the UK and France and so on, and flooding to this area. And so it seemed like a pretty popular thing to do. And so the idea is, hey, these people who went and joined ISIS, they already had those ideas that that's what real Islam is. It's just they were just waiting. They're just waiting for someone to stand up for true Islam. And as soon as it happens, oh yes, we need to go. I mean, teenage girls already had the idea that this is what true Islam is. So they find out, oh, now we're establishing an Islamic state. They say, yes, I want to go be part of that. I don't want to be here in the UK. And it's just we get attacked for bringing this up, that you have problems in these communities, when, hey, I've known tons of peaceful Muslims over the years. I've had Muslim friends that I know were not trying to deceive me. They were not trying to hurt me. I've known their families. Their families weren't trying to hurt me. Their families were genuinely peaceful people. But that is saying, oh, but you have, plenty of Muslims who are peaceful in these communities. That's not the problem. It's if wherever a group goes, there is this significant minority who want to go around killing and slaughtering unbelievers and subjugating the entire world. You say, oh, but it's a minority. Yeah, what are you guys what is the Muslim community? What is CAIR going to do about these people in your community? And so you have this significant minority who want to go around killing. You have a bigger minority who, even if they aren't going to go out and slaughter people in a terrorist attack, they still approve of the attacks. And then you have large numbers who approve of things like killing apostates and things like that. And you go to a place like Egypt, and then you get to like, what was it, 85, 90 some percent of people approve of killing apostates. And so you have tons and tons of people. And so I can sit here and say, hey, look at the problems that are going on in these communities. And you say, aha, but the terrorists are a minority. Right, but it goes wherever Islam goes. You have this minority who wants to kill people. And we ask you what you are going to do about it, what your organization, what your Muslim organization, what your mosque is going to do about these people who want to blow us up at random. And you say, nothing we can really do about it, because they're just weird people with weird ideas. And okay, well, if you can't deal with them, then Robert and I will try dealing with them, but we're not allowed to deal with them. So once again, we're stuck with a problem. Everyone has to shut up in the face of jihad.
Yeah. I've had so many of those guys tell me, oh, you don't understand Islam. Islam is truly peaceful, and so on and so on. And I say, why don't you go and try to explain this to Al-Qaeda or ISIS? Oh, they're fanatics. They're crazy. You can't talk to them. Okay, so then nothing can be done about this, apparently.
Nothing.
And it's interesting to me how many Islamic apologists in the West All they want to do is convince non-Muslims that Islam is peaceful. But they're not doing anything within the Islamic communities to try to deal with this problem. Meanwhile, in Austria, David, we have a morals police force. And usually they are Chechens who have been forming this police force of guardians of morals in Vienna. And they have been beating people. They have been beating women and children for violating Islamic law in Vienna, Austria.
Well, I mean, if you really want to know what would help the world, it would be followers of a prophet who had sex with a prepubescent little girl, imposing those moral values on other people.
Yeah, well, there's the problem. And of course, the difficulty is that Islam is an empire of fear. It's not real virtue. You know, in Christianity, the idea is you resist sin because you love God. You understand that this is not really what is good or right for you. It will be better for you if you don't do it, and so on and so on. In Islam, it's just because there are these draconian punishments that you don't sin. It's because you're too afraid to sin that you don't sin. And this is what this morals police force in Vienna is kind of symbolizing, that they don't go to you and try to convince you that it's better to be virtuous. They just beat you up. And then you think, well, I better be virtuous, so these guys are going to come beat me again.
Yeah, and really, I mean, from an ethical perspective, from the perspective of ethics, you're not making people more moral by, beating them for doing the wrong thing. You're kind of taking away their ability to do the right thing for the right reason. In other words, imagine I'm walking down the street and I see a purse filled with money and jewelry on the ground. Some woman dropped her purse filled with money and jewelry. When I'm in that situation, I actually have an opportunity to do the right thing for the right reason. I can return it, or I can say, you know what, I'm kind of hard up for cash, so I'm going to go ahead and keep it. But I have a choice right there to do the right thing or the wrong thing. If I'm walking down the street and I see a purse filled with money and jewelry, and I look down and all of a sudden I look up and there's a guy with a club standing over me, well, now I don't have a choice, right? I have to hand that over. There's no option, right? I can hand it over. I haven't done anything right. I haven't done anything good. I have preserved myself from getting bashed with a club. It was completely self-serving. And notice, if your entire moral world is governed by, not being beheaded or not being lashed or not being, beaten or not being beaten up by your husband and things like that, if your entire moral world is just a system of fear, you never actually develop morally. You don't become the sort of person who can resist temptation. And I don't think it's a coincidence, Robert, that you have immigrants coming from, the Middle East or from Pakistan, where there are all these punishments, and they get to the UK and all of a sudden, they form rape gangs and stuff like that, because hey, if I can take it, I'll do it. I don't get beaten and tortured here for doing this. I can get away with it here, and they have no inner moral strength.
They're uncovered women, and the Quran says in chapter 33, verse 59, that the women should cover themselves so that they are not molested, which has the subtext of then the women who aren't covered can be molested. So there you go.
Unwrapped food. Now I know you had a bunch more open tabs, but with these last
one more, David, I got to give you.
Okay.
Before we go, okay?
Yeah.
One more. This is out of France.
Okay.
And a few days ago, a Muslim appeared in court, actually on Monday, for justifying terrorism, premeditated violence, and threatening to kill. He assaulted several people, and he screamed, "You infidel! We're going to kill you all! Allahu Akbar." And so this, unfortunately, is all too common, increasingly common feature of life in France. And it's interesting to note once again that by screaming Allahu Akbar, the man who is carrying out these assaults explicitly grounds his actions in Islam. And it is as if he is saying, I am being brutal and violent to you because I am a Muslim, because this is the command of Allah for me.
Very, very strange interpretation. That's another guy who must have been getting all his information from your website, because there's nowhere in the Muslim sources which call for, violent jihad. You couldn't come to this conclusion unless you're just insane, some sort of insane bigot.
He was probably helping the homeless.
Yeah, we do have a couple of minutes left. I was wondering if you could just touch on the issue of social media issues going on, because I'm seeing something about Facebook here on the front page of your website, and the title is Facebook allowed photos of beheadings from ISIS and the Taliban to be tagged as insightful and engaging.
Yes, that's insightful with an SIGHT, not inciting violence. This just indicates that Facebook is a terrible double standard in its policing of whatever it called. What does it call it? Inappropriate content. In any case, there have been many, many people who have dissented, who oppose jihad violence, who have been banned from Facebook. My site on Facebook is heavily shadow banned. You can barely find it. If you find it, there's hardly anybody there. This is
I gave up on Facebook. I just left. I deleted my account.
Yeah. Well, I can understand that, except my tech guy won't let me delete it altogether.
Yeah. Well, I'm not telling anyone else to do it. I'm just saying I got to the point where it is pointless for me to be on here because they just kept in. Yeah. And in fact, I'll tell you, the kind of straw that broke the camel's back, because I would get messaged a death threat. I'm going to kill you, David. And I would say, hey, look at this. Look at what someone just sent me. And Facebook would ban me for 3 days or a week for posting that a guy threatened to kill me. Now, they obviously wouldn't do that. If someone threatened a Muslim and the Muslim said, hey, look, this guy's threatening me, they're not going to ban that. But if I say, hey, this guy threatened to kill me, I would get banned for hate speech. It's hate speech for me to post that someone else called for my death. But the one that happened over and over and over again, I put up with it for a while. But the one that really, the straw that broke the camel's back, I posted a picture. It's a pretty famous picture. I'm sure many people have seen it before, of a Nazi rally. They gathered workers at, I think, a shipyard or something like that, and they made all the workers do the Nazi salute, and they take a picture. And there's one guy sitting in the middle with his arms crossed, and he's just looking like really annoyed, like what is this nonsense, right? So I posted a picture of that guy with a circle around him and an arrow pointing to him saying, be this guy. In other words, be a guy who look, if you want to kill me, but I'm not hailing this guy, right? Facebook banned that for hate speech, right? I'm like, wow. But notice how perfect it is, right? I'm saying, be the sort of person who would not back down, even if you're surrounded, by a group that would put you to death. Don't back down. Facebook says, we can't allow that on our platform. We can't allow you to say something like that. You can post pictures of beheadings. They're insightful.
Jihadi sites have had no problem. That's what the story's about. Mm-hmm. Jihadi sites do not get flagged on Facebook.
All right. Any final words before we sign off for the week? Never to be heard from again?
Yeah, I think this is it, David. That's the end of jihad. They're going to hang it up at the end of this year, and so we're done.
Yep, we are done talking about jihad because really that force of peace within Islam has to be kicking in right about now. It's a religion of peace, and in 14 centuries of jihad against the entire world, obviously the jihad movement has to be out of steam, and we're going to get the peace is going to kick in.
We're going to get the greater jihad now. We can talk next week about how Zahra Balloo devoted herself to prayer and good works all week, and that was her jihad.
That was her jihad. Staying fit. That's her jihad. All right. So everyone who's watching, all you Muslims who are watching, you flip out when we talk about your prophet and say we must hate you because we criticize your prophet and we criticize your book. Guys, that's part of your religion to hate people because of, you have different views. That's part of your religion, right? When it says fight those who do not believe, then you think that any time someone says, well, they don't agree with you on something, that's a call to fight. No. I'm telling you this stuff because I want the best for you. And Islam is just not the best for you. Islam is not what's best for you or for anyone else. So leave that religion. All right. Thanks to Robert Spencer. Definitely want to visit Jihad Watch. If you don't have a copy of The History of Jihad, get that on Amazon. And once again, we'll never see you again because there's going to be no jihad before next week. Catch y'all later.